My dad threatened to cut off my tuition if I didn't kneel at my golden sister's wedding. They still saw me as their useless daughter. They had no idea I graduated top of my class, earned six figures, and returned to turn their perfect day into a nightmare. The moment my dad's name lit up my phone for the fifth time that morning, a chill ran down my spine. It wasn't a "how are you" or an "I miss you," it was a cold, hard demand that would finally force me to reveal the secret life I'd meticulously built, a life they never thought I was capable of. They wanted me at my sister's wedding? Fine. But I wasn't coming as the forgotten daughter. I was coming as the storm they never saw coming. See, my father had threatened me. Attend Lily's wedding, or he'd cut me off. No more college tuition. He thought I'd panic, that I'd crawl back like I always did. What he didn't know was that I had already graduated with honors from one of the top universities in the country on a full scholarship. While they imagined me wasting away at community college, I was quietly building a life they never dreamed I could have without them. A six-figure job, my own apartment overlooking Lake Michigan, and zero debt. They had no control over me anymore. So, I booked a first-class flight home, not to beg, not to obey, but to expose the truth they refused to see. This isn't just a story about comeuppance. It's about power, truth, and finally taking back what was stolen from you. And by the time that wedding was over, no one looked at me the same way again. Let me tell you exactly how it all unfolded. My name is Elena. For years, I was the quiet observer, the one who followed the rules, cleaned up, and got straight A's without being asked. While Lily, my beautiful, dramatic, adored sister, constantly basked in the spotlight even for things she didn't earn, I was always the other daughter. The last time I'd been home, Lily was getting praised for being tree number 2 in a middle school play. I just won the state science fair, and my parents simply forgot to show up. It wasn't personal, I kept telling myself it was just the way things were. So, at 19, I walked away, not in anger, but with a quiet resolve. I knew if I stayed, I'd slowly disappear, one overlooked test score, one ignored trophy, one forgotten birthday at a time. I forged an acceptance letter to a local community college, but secretly accepted admission to Columbia. I mapped out my independence like a military operation, working nights, tutoring math, saving every penny. Now, 7 years later, I had everything I needed: a career as a data analyst for a top tech firm, savings, peace. And then the phone calls started. My father's name, blinking on my screen again and again. His voicemail was a storm cloud. "This has gone on long enough, Elena. Your sister's wedding is in 2 weeks. If you can't put aside whatever bitterness you're holding, don't expect another dime from this family." Bitterness. That's what they called it. Not distance, not survival. Just bitterness. They still thought they held power. They still imagined I was that scared girl they'd cornered into staying close to home for Lily's sake. They had no idea. I opened my laptop and booked that first-class ticket. Not for the luxury, but for the message it sent. They wanted me home? I would come. But not as the quiet daughter, not as the forgotten one. I was coming as the woman they didn't see coming. The small town hadn't changed a bit, the welcome sign still leaning, the roads cracked in the same old places. But as I stepped onto my parents' porch, I knew I had. My mother opened the door, clipboard in hand, scanning my face like I was a stranger. "Elena," she said flatly. "You made it." No hug, no smile, just a quick glance behind her, as if checking if the neighbors had seen me arrive. Inside, the house reeked of vanilla candles and something chemical, probably fresh paint. The living room was buried under piles of tulle, ribbon, and white cardboard boxes labeled bridesmaid kits. "You can put your bag over there," she gestured vaguely. "We need help getting the welcome baskets done before 4. I hadn't even taken off my coat. "I just walked in the door," I replied. She just looked at me. "Well, now you're here. Be useful." It felt like stepping back into a role I'd thought I'd outgrown. Within 5 minutes, I was handed a hot glue gun, as if the last 7 years of my life had never happened. An hour later, my father appeared, reading glasses low on his nose. "Good. You're settled," he said, holding a seating chart. "Lily wants to review the table arrangements after dinner. And we need someone to steam the reception linens. No, how was your trip?" No, it's good to see you. Just orders. I said nothing. I just noted how easily they slipped back into treating me like a utility. Lily arrived in a flurry of chiffon, her phone pressed to her ear. I specifically said cascading, not gathered, she shrieked down the stairs. She spotted me, raised a finger in the universal sign for wait, and continued berating someone about the florist. When she finally hung up, she air-kissed my cheek. You made it, she said, as if surprised. Thank God. The caterer's threatening to walk, and Mom can't figure out the seating chart. This wedding is going to kill me. She didn't ask how I was, didn't notice the tension in my shoulders. In this house, Lily's stress eclipsed all else. Dinner was at 6. Evan, the fiancé, arrived precisely on time, an expensive bottle of red in hand, wearing a pressed white shirt that looked made to measure. He was tall, with a polished smile and a handshake meant to impress. So this is the mysterious sister, he said, his eyes locking with mine. Lily had apparently called me the quiet one. I just smiled politely. I'd met enough men like Evan to know when a performance was underway. He spoke well, too well, throwing around phrases like market velocity and token liquidity with ease, claiming to be part of a global network of investors with direct pipelines to platforms in Singapore and Zurich. Every few minutes, he'd glance at Charles, who hung on his every word. He's already helping your dad look at some real estate restructuring, my mother chirped, beaming. Just brilliant. I decided to ask a question, something technical about blockchain protocols. Evan's answer was vague, a little too rehearsed. I leaned back and watched him talk. Charming, confident, slick. Too slick. Lily beamed the entire time, laughing at his jokes, leaning into his shoulder like a schoolgirl. The room pulsed with shared admiration, and I was, once again, the invisible thread in the fabric of my own family. But this time, something had shifted. I wasn't a girl desperate to be noticed anymore. I was a woman watching a puzzle, and I could already see the edges starting to come apart. The main course arrived, and Evan found his rhythm. Charles and I have been going over a few investment strategies, he began, cutting into his fillet with practiced ease. With rates the way they are, and volatility in the public markets, there's incredible upside in decentralized assets if you know where to look. My father nodded solemnly, as if he'd been studying finance his entire life. He's really opened my eyes. I never realized how old-fashioned traditional banks are. Evan smiled, pleased. Most people don't. But in Singapore, Zurich, even Dubai, we're seeing accelerated models that make the US look prehistoric. Lily, sipping her wine, leaned forward. Tell them about the yacht. Evan chuckled. Well, last month I met with one of our angel investors on his yacht. In the Adriatic. Only way to talk business without distractions. The table offered a polite laugh. I did not. Instead, I calmly placed my fork down. Which platform are the tokens being issued on? I asked. Ethereum? Solana? Or something proprietary? Evan blinked. A subtle pause. It's a proprietary setup. We've built it on a hybrid framework that optimizes both transaction speed and security. Interesting, I said. Even hybrid chains can be tricky. What protocol are you using to handle smart contract deployment? Another pause. Longer this time. Evan's smile took a moment to reach his eyes. It's a layered approach, he waved vaguely. We focus more on strategic outcomes than the technical nitty-gritty. The tech people handle that. My mother jumped in quickly, sensing a shift. What matters is that Evan gets results. He's already helped Charles rethink our entire portfolio. My father added, he's got access to opportunities you won't find on the open market. I tilted my head. Do those opportunities come with regulatory oversight? I assume you have SEC documentation for any domestic capital raised. Evan's jaw twitched. These are private placements, Elena. Not your average 401k stuff. My father leaned back, setting his fork down harder than necessary. Is there a point to this line of questioning? I looked at him. No point. Just curious. Seems to me like you're being combative, he said. Not everyone needs to be interrogated at the dinner table. I wasn't aware asking about financial compliance was combative, I replied. You've always had a way of making people uncomfortable, my mother said with a strained smile. Just let your sister be happy. Evan laughed, light and dismissive. It's fine. I get this a lot. Some people just don't understand what we're building. Revolutionary ideas always attract skeptics. Lily, visibly irritated, reached for her wine. Why are you doing this? Doing what? I asked. Making it a thing, she snapped. Every time something good happens to me, you find a way to throw shade. My father pointed his knife at me. That's exactly it. You've always been resentful. It's not Evan's fault you've been struggling. I didn't laugh. I didn't flinch. I just picked up my glass, took a small sip, and let the silence settle. They didn't know. They still thought I was cobbling together tuition, living with roommates in some drafty apartment. They still believed I was the one who fell short. I had made 6 figures last quarter alone. But saying it out loud would only turn into another accusation, bragging, ungrateful, difficult. So, I sat with my thoughts. Evan returned to his speech, talking about token liquidity and off-market deals that sounded suspiciously vague. Singapore again, Switzerland, the Caymans. Big words, global locations, no specifics, no documentation. It wasn't the content that bothered me. It was the choreography. Evan knew how to impress people like my father. Confident tone, bold claims, exotic names. To Charles, that was all it took to feel important, ahead of the curve. I looked around the table. They were mesmerized. Lily's eyes sparkled. My mother smiled with pride. My father nodded like he'd just discovered a gold mine. Evan was winning the room, and he knew it. And yet, in all his polish, something didn't add up. Not yet. Not clearly. But I felt it. Like the tension before a wire snaps, the quiet note behind the music that doesn't belong. I didn't know what Evan was hiding, but I intended to find out. The next morning, I wandered into my father's study. I barely slept. Evan's performance kept replaying in my mind. Charles's study, as I remembered, was lined with unread books and framed community college certificates. On his desk sat an open file folder. I recognized the header immediately, Home Equity Loan Refinance Agreement. My breath caught. I flipped through the pages. Recent, just 3 weeks prior. Their house, nearly paid off after 25 years, was now tied to a significant second mortgage. I flipped further. Scrawled in Charles's tidy cursive was a note, per Evan's recommendation. 20% returns projected by Q2. I froze. This wasn't just my father dabbling. He had staked their home on Evan's word. The house my mother once swore would be their legacy. All on Evan's word. I replaced the papers exactly where I found them and exited quietly. Later that afternoon, as I stepped into the backyard for air, I spotted Aunt Diane pulling weeds. I walked over, partly to escape the wedding madness, partly for clarity. She looked up. Didn't think we'd see you again, kid. I forced a smile. Family duty. Diane glanced toward the house, then leaned closer. You believe in that fiancé of hers? I raised an eyebrow. You don't. I don't know, Diane admitted. He's charming, sure, but something feels off. Last month, a neighbor down in Tampa lost his retirement fund to a guy who talked just like Evan. Crypto this, global that, promised returns too good to be real. My pulse quickened. Do you remember the name? Just bits, Diane said. The guy changed his name a couple of times. But one of the aliases was Edward something or Ethan. It wasn't much. But it was enough. That night, back in the guest room, I powered up my laptop. There was no need to pretend anymore. What sat before the screen now was a trained analyst with an advanced degree in data science, a career in fraud detection, and a brain built for pattern recognition. I opened my usual suite of tools: public registries, business databases, social media scrapers, metadata trackers. It was second nature. I started with Evan Cross. Nothing, at least nothing predating 2 years ago. I widened the search. Then I found something curious, an archived engagement announcement from 3 years ago in Colorado. Same face, different name. Ethan Lewis. I dug deeper. A LinkedIn profile under Edward Lambert. Now deleted, but with remnants cached by the Internet Archive. The profile matched Evan's resume too perfectly: blockchain advisor, investor network, global finance. 3 aliases. Same face. Same playbook. And with each identity, the same pattern: appearance, charm, investment pitch, then vanishing after a large financial shift. I pulled the public bankruptcy records for each location tied to the previous names. Each showed an uptick in personal losses from community investors within months of Evans or Ethan's or Edward's appearance. It was no longer a hunch. It was a pattern, a deliberate, polished operation. And now he had my family in his crosshairs. I sat back, heart pounding, but my face calm. I wasn't angry. Not yet. This wasn't personal vengeance. It was statistical inevitability. I had seen this before in other cases, just never in my own home. I opened a new file, labeled it Cross-Fraud Risk Report V1. Tomorrow, I would begin building the case. And this time, my family would be forced to listen, whether they wanted to or not. I didn't sleep much that night. My laptop screen burned its glow into my vision long after I shut it. I kept thinking of the faces behind the data, real people, real losses. And now my sister was standing at the edge of the same trap. The next morning, I made a call. It took 3 transfers and a sympathetic dispatcher in Colorado to track down one of the names from my late-night search. Karen Delaney, a woman listed in a police report from 3 years ago, tied to a financial disappearance eerily similar to what I now suspected. Karen's voice was cautious on the phone. "Who are you again?" "My name is Elena Hart," I said. "You don't know me, but I think the man who nearly ruined your life is about to do the same to my sister." There was a long pause. "Then where can we meet?" We sat across from each other in a quiet cafe. Karen looked older than her years, her eyes guarded, her posture stiff. Her hands trembled slightly as she stirred her coffee. I didn't speak first. I let Karen take the time she needed. After several minutes, she finally opened her purse and slid over a worn folder. Inside were photographs, bank statements, email printouts, even a faded engagement invitation with Edward Lawson printed in gold lettering. I blinked. The face in the photo smiled back at me. Sleek suit, carefully styled hair, arm wrapped around Karen's waist. It was unmistakably Evan. Different name, different city, same man. We met at a tech conference in Denver, Karen began, her voice low but steady. He said he was building a new crypto platform, something revolutionary. I didn't understand all of it, but he made it sound real. He made me feel like I was part of something big. She looked away for a moment, as if ashamed of the memory. He proposed 6 months later. My family was thrilled. He was charming, helpful. Everyone loved him. He convinced my parents to co-sign a loan for our new place. I wired him $60,000 for a pre-investment opportunity he said had to be made fast. 3 days before the wedding, he vanished. Karen lifted her sleeve slightly, revealing a delicate tattoo near her wrist, a date. I got this to remind myself never to ignore red flags again. I felt a knot forming in my chest. Did the police find him? They tried, Karen said bitterly. But the money was routed through offshore accounts. No contract, no direct trail. It was ruled a civil matter. Just like that, he was gone, and I was left with debt, shame, and a mother who still asks what I did wrong. My hands tightened around my coffee cup. "I thought I was alone," Karen added quietly, "until you called." "You're not," I replied. "He's using a new name now. Evan Cross. He's engaged to my sister, Lily. The wedding is in 5 days." Karen inhaled sharply. 5 days. That's when he disappears. I nodded. He's already convinced my father to refinance the house. My mother's retirement fund is in. I need proof. Real proof. Karen reached into the folder again and pulled out a USB stick. I saved everything. Even after the police said it wasn't enough. Emails, voicemails, texts. And there are 2 more women I've spoken to over the years. Same pattern, different names. I took the drive, my jaw set. "Thank you. This changes everything." Karen leaned forward, her voice more forceful now. "Your sister won't believe it until it's too late." I didn't. Not when my best friend tried to warn me. Love makes you blind. "I don't need her to believe me yet," I said. "I just need to be ready when everything starts to crack." As I stood to leave, Karen grabbed my wrist. "You seem like the kind who keeps her promises," she said. "So, promise me something." I looked her in the eye. Don't let him ruin another life. I won't, I whispered. He picked the wrong sister this time. As I stepped out into the cool morning air, the weight of Karen's pain settled over my shoulders. But so did a growing fire. This wasn't just about saving Lily anymore. It was about justice for every woman who had been deceived, every parent who had been tricked, every future that had been stolen. And this time, I had the skills, the tools, and now the proof. Evan's perfect game was about to be exposed, and I, Elena Hart, would be the one to do it. The living room felt colder than usual, despite the late afternoon sun casting a golden hue across the hardwood floors. I stood by the coffee table, my laptop open, a stack of printed documents beside me. My heartbeat echoed in my ears, but my voice remained steady. I need all of you to listen carefully, I said. My father, Charles, sat stiffly on the leather armchair, arms crossed. My mother, Margaret, hovered near the fireplace, pretending to tidy a flower arrangement. Lily was curled up on the sofa, a silk robe draped around her, her eyes rimmed with excitement and exhaustion from wedding planning. Evan, the charming fiancé, leaned casually against the wall, swirling a glass of wine, his confidence undisturbed. I connected the laptop to the television and brought up a slideshow. The first photo appeared, Evan's face, smiling, clean-cut, but under the name Edward Lawson. The room shifted. Then the next, Ethan Lewis, same face, different background, next to another woman in an engagement photo. A bank statement followed, showing tens of thousands transferred before a wedding that never happened. Police reports, names of victims, timelines. Each file I displayed built the pattern tighter, more damning. Karen's voice, recorded from our meeting, played through the speakers. He left 3 days before the wedding. Took everything. I turned to face them. His name isn't Evan. He's used at least 3 aliases. He's done this before. Every single time he wins, takes the money, and disappears. Evan chuckled softly, the sound like nails against a chalkboard. Are you serious? This is a smear campaign. You think I'm some con artist using fake names? That's absurd. He turned to Charles and Margaret, his voice warm, wounded. Sir, ma'am, I love Lily. I'd never do anything to hurt her. This is disgusting. Lily looked stunned. Her mouth opened, but no sound came. Her gaze darted between the screen and Evan's face, searching for reassurance. My father stood up, voice sharp. That's enough, Elena. You've embarrassed yourself and insulted a guest in our home. He's not a guest, I said. He's a predator. My mother stepped forward, her tone clipped. You've always had issues with your sister's happiness. This isn't about Evan. It's about you. What? I whispered. You've been distant for years, never supportive, and now you come back uninvited and try to ruin her wedding. Her one perfect day. My mother's voice rose, trembling. Lily finally spoke, tears brimming. You were never happy for me, Elena. Never. Every time I achieved something, you made it about you. Why can't you just let me have this? I took a step forward. Because he's lying to you. Lily shook her head violently. No, you're lying. Because you can't stand that for once, someone picked me. Not you. I reeled. The words hit harder than I expected. I looked to my father, hoping for doubt, consideration, anything. But instead, Charles glared at me with the cold authority of a man convinced. You're just jealous, Elena. Admit it. You've always been jealous that Lily has what you never could, charm. Warmth. A family who actually wants her around. The silence that followed was deafening. I make 6 figures, I whispered. I've built a life on my own, and none of you ever noticed. That's not the point. Margaret snapped. Family is about showing up, supporting one another, not digging up dirt and waving it around like some kind of victory. I stared at them. My mouth opened, but words failed me. I wasn't sure what hurt more, their refusal to see the truth or their eagerness to believe the worst of me. Evan, ever the actor, put an arm around Lily's shoulder. It's okay, babe. Let her have her moment. She clearly needs help. My mother flinched at that word, but said nothing. Lily leaned into him. I shut the laptop slowly. I warned you. As I turned to leave, Aunt Diane, who had been silently watching from the doorway, stepped further into the room. Her eyes didn't leave Charles's face. "Elena," Diane said quietly, "can I speak to you for a moment?" We stepped into the hallway. Diane's voice dropped to a whisper. "I believe you." My eyes filled with tears, but I didn't let them fall. Diane continued, "Charles, he's not telling the whole truth. The refinancing papers you found, he didn't mention them to Margaret. And when I asked him about them yesterday, he got flustered. He's hiding something." My spine straightened. "What kind of something?" "I don't know. But he's too invested in Evan. And not just emotionally, financially. He's got more at stake than he's saying." I nodded. "Then I need to move faster." I walked out the front door, my heart pounding, not with grief this time, but with clarity. My family had chosen comfort over truth again. But this time, the truth had teeth, and I wasn't done yet. The front door slammed shut behind me with a force that echoed down the darkened street. The click of the lock that followed felt louder than anything Charles had ever said. I stood motionless on the porch, stunned. The warm evening air couldn't fight off the cold that had settled in my chest. It had happened so fast. My father's face, red with fury, had twisted as he jabbed a finger toward the door. "Get out. I don't care where you go, but you will not stay in this house another minute." Margaret had gasped, but said nothing. Lily buried her face in Evan's chest, shaking with tears, not over what had been revealed, but over the disruption I had caused. Not one of them had asked if the documents were real. Not one had stopped to consider that I might be telling the truth. The choice had already been made. Now I stood with my suitcase beside me, the porch light casting long shadows. I hadn't planned to reveal the truth this way, but I wasn't going to leave like some disgraced child slinking into the night. I turned around, stepped back to the doorway, and knocked once, hard. Charles flung open the door. "What more could you possibly want?" To say what should have been said years ago, I replied, my voice calm, but full of steel. Margaret appeared behind him, looking torn, but silent. Lily refused to look at me. "You think I came here out of jealousy?" I said, my gaze locking with my father's. "You think I spent nights digging into Evan's past because I couldn't stand seeing Lily in a white dress? No. I came here because, unlike you, I pay attention to what matters." I opened my purse and pulled out my company ID badge, holding it up so they could see. I didn't go to community college. I went to Columbia, full scholarship, graduated top of my class in data analytics. I reached into my bag again and held up a letter with the company letterhead, my most recent promotion to senior data strategist. I've been working at one of the most respected tech firms in Chicago since I was 21. I pay my own rent, my own health insurance, and yes, my own student loans, because you cut me off when I didn't follow the plan you set for me. Charles's mouth opened, but no sound came. "I've been independent since I was 18, I continued, my voice unwavering. "Everything I have, I earned. While you were too busy giving Lily applause for showing up, I was out there building a life you never bothered to ask about." I took a step forward. Charles instinctively stepped back. "I didn't come here to destroy anything. I came here to protect what little is left." I tried to warn you before it was too late." "You're still leaving," Charles growled, though with less conviction than before. "I know," I said. I looked once more at my mother. Margaret's lips quivered, but she said nothing. Then at Lily, who still clung to Evan like he was her last chance at happiness. Evan's face remained unreadable, but his eyes were calculating, already preparing for the next move. I drew in a breath. "I'm not running away, Dad," I said softly but firmly. "I'm walking away with the truth. And you'll remember that when everything falls apart." I turned and walked back down the steps, my heels striking the concrete like punctuation marks. Each step was a beat of finality. I didn't look back, not once. The night air felt different this time, sharper, cleaner. I pulled my coat tighter, not against the cold, but against the weight I'd finally shed. The invisible daughter was no longer invisible. Inside that house, they would continue spinning illusions for a little while longer. But truth, I knew, had a way of showing up, loud, brutal, and undeniable. And when it did, they'd remember the moment I stood at that door, told them who I truly was, and left without asking for anything in return. 3 days before the wedding, Evan disappeared. At first, My mother assumed he had gone to finalize a surprise for the reception. My father brushed it off, claiming Evan had mentioned a business meeting. Even Lily tried to excuse it, saying he might be giving her space before the big day. But as the hours ticked by, unanswered calls piled up, and Evan's voicemail changed to an automated service, the illusion began to crack. By the next morning, his phone was off. His hotel suite, booked under a different name, was empty. The front desk confirmed he'd checked out before dawn and had left no forwarding address. Then came the banking alerts. My father stared at the screen in disbelief. Every cent from their joint wedding account, gone. My mother opened her retirement portal, only to find her balance at zero. The mortgage account, refinanced just a few weeks prior, now showed a massive balance due with no sign of repayment. Lily stood frozen in the kitchen as Charles tore open envelope after envelope. Each one confirmed what I had tried to warn them about. The trust account Charles had opened to grow wealth through Evan's investment connections wiped. The credit cards maxed. The backup savings fund transferred to an untraceable account linked to an LLC in the Cayman Islands. My mother collapsed onto the couch, a soft moan escaping her lips as the full scale of the betrayal settled in. My father clenched his fists so tightly his knuckles turned white, his face pale with disbelief, not just at the theft, but at himself. He had welcomed Evan in, praised him, defended him, and now Evan was gone, just as I said he would be. In the hours that followed, reality hit harder. The caterer pulled out after learning the deposit check had bounced. The florist arrived only to remove all arrangements after non-payment. Even the photographer canceled, citing unpaid invoices. Lily's gown, custom-made and already altered, hung limp in the hallway, untouched. And amid it all, Lily sat in silence. Her perfectly manicured fingers trembled around her phone, hovering for hours over my contact. By evening, she finally sent the message. I was wrong. Please come home. I need you. No emojis, no punctuation, just a raw, desperate plea. I sat by the window in my Chicago apartment, sipping black coffee. The skyline blinked peacefully in the distance. I had seen the news articles first. Then came Aunt Diane's update. Finally, Lily's message, stark and heavy. I reread the words again. Please come home. The irony wasn't lost on me. Home had never been a place where I felt seen. And now, with their world in ashes, they called for me. A part of me wanted to ignore it. Let them sit in the consequences of their choices. Let them understand what it meant to discard someone who only ever tried to protect them. But another part, the part that still remembered Lily clinging to me during thunderstorms as children, or our shared giggles over secret chocolate bars hidden under the bed, couldn't quite walk away. I set the mug down. Not out of pity, not out of forgiveness, but because power didn't always mean revenge. Sometimes it meant being the one person who didn't turn away, even when they had. I opened my suitcase and began to pack. Not for a wedding. For the reckoning. The Walker house no longer felt like a home when I returned. The front porch, once glowing with bridal decorations, now stood bare. Inside, the silence was heavier than the chaos of wedding preparations had ever been. My father paced in the living room with the same clipboard he had once wielded as authority, but now it hung limp in his hand. My mother sat at the dining table, her face pale, lines of worry etching deeper than I remembered. Lily was upstairs, her sobs muffled through the floorboards. They had called me back because there was no one else left. I placed my briefcase on the coffee table and remained standing. I did not remove my coat, did not sit, did not soften my tone. I will help you, I said, but not on your terms. On mine. Charles turned quickly, his eyes bloodshot, desperate, but still laced with pride. We need immediate funds. The bank, no, I cut him off. Not immediate funds, not cash, not a bailout you can squander. Every cent will move through a licensed financial advisor. You will not have direct access. If I step in, it's under professional oversight. Nothing informal, nothing hidden. My father's jaw tightened. He opened his mouth to argue, but my mother reached over and touched his wrist, silencing him. I continued, my voice firm. This is not a gift. It's not charity. It's a transaction with conditions. And the first condition is this. I pulled a stack of documents from my briefcase, the paper crisp against the still air. You will sign this acknowledgement in writing. Witnessed, notarized. Charles frowned and reached for the top page, scanning it quickly. His face darkened. This is nonsense. My voice sharpened. Read it aloud. Charles slammed the paper back onto the table. Margaret picked it up with trembling hands and read softly. We, Charles and Margaret Walker, acknowledge that for years we created and maintained an environment of favoritism and emotional neglect, favoring one child over the other. Her eyes lifted to me, shame heavy in her expression. You want us to sign this? Yes, I said. Because I will not allow you to rewrite history once you've been rescued. If I help you save this house, save what you have left, then you will put in writing what you denied me for 20 years. You will say it. You will admit it. Charles pushed back his chair so hard it scraped the floor. You don't dictate terms in this house. I leaned forward, my gaze unflinching. I do when I'm the one keeping the roof over your head. For a long, brittle silence, no one moved. Then Margaret's voice broke it, quiet, weary, yet carrying more weight than I had ever heard before. Charles, she's right. He spun toward her. Don't you dare, I said. She's right, Margaret repeated, louder this time. Her hands shook as she set the paper down. Do you know why I recognized what we were doing to her? Because it was done to me. She lifted her eyes to me, and for the first time, they brimmed with something that looked like truth. I was the forgotten one too. My sister was the golden child. My parents poured everything into her. I swore I would never repeat it. And then I did. My breath caught. I had imagined many things my mother might say in this moment, deflection, excuses, even tears. But not this. Not confession. Margaret pressed her hands together, twisting her wedding ring nervously. I told myself Lily needed more, that she was fragile, that you were strong enough to stand on your own. But really, I was replaying the same script I grew up with. Only this time, I was on the other side. Charles stared at her, thunderstruck. His authority, once so absolute, seemed to drain from him. Margaret turned back to me. If signing this is what it takes, I will sign. Because I won't deny you any longer. I looked at my mother, measuring every word. There was sincerity there, but also too many years of silence to erase with one admission. Still, this was something more than I had ever been given before. I slid the pen across the table. Then sign. Margaret picked it up with trembling fingers. For a moment, she hesitated, staring at the space where her name would go. Then she pressed the ink into the paper, her signature flowing across the page. I turned to my father. Your turn. Charles's hand hovered, his pride warring with the reality of foreclosure notices and empty accounts. Finally, with a grimace that looked more like defeat than agreement, he scrawled his name. I gathered the signed papers and slid them back into my briefcase. Only then did I sit. Good, I said. Now we can begin. But remember, this isn't about trust anymore. That ended when you chose him over me. This is about control, and this time I have it. No one argued. The balance of power in the Walker family had shifted. And for the first time, I wasn't invisible. I was undeniable. The evening stretched heavy inside the Walker living room. The signed papers sat in my briefcase like a silent witness. But I knew a signature alone would not cleanse the past. I looked at my parents, at my sister curled small in the corner of the sofa, and realized the time had come to strip away the last layer of denial. You want to know why I don't believe in your idea of family? I said, my voice calm but unwavering. Because for me, family was always a one-way street. I stood, my eyes fixed on Charles and Margaret. Do you remember my 8th birthday? You forgot. Both of you. I sat in the kitchen waiting for cake that never came while you took Lily to her dance recital. You told me later it was an oversight. But when she won nothing more than a participation ribbon, you took her out for ice cream and posted photos as if it were a championship. Margaret's lips parted, but no words came. 9th grade, I continued, the science fair. I won first place for analyzing water quality in the county. I stood there holding a ribbon while Principal Davis asked why my parents hadn't shown up. You were at Lily's soccer game. She scored 1 goal. You told that story for weeks. My mother's hands gripped the edge of her chair, knuckles white. Charles avoided my eyes. High school graduation, I said, my voice tightening. You left the ceremony early. Not because of traffic, not because of work. Because Lily had a date to prom, and you didn't want her to miss the hair appointment. I walked across that stage and looked up to find the seats where you should have been. Empty. The words landed like stones in water, rippling through the silence. No one moved. My voice softened, but the edge of pain remained. Every milestone that mattered to me you erased. Every moment I thought you might notice, you chose her instead. And I let it happen. I told myself I didn't need your approval. But I did. I just stopped admitting it when it hurt too much to hope. I turned to Lily. Her eyes were glassy, rimmed with mascara smudges. And you, I said. You knew Evan wasn't right, didn't you? Lily flinched. For a moment, she looked like she might deny it. But something in my stare held her there, pinned. Finally, she whispered, I saw things. I knew something was off. What things? I pressed. Lily swallowed hard. He was secretive about his phone. He changed his story sometimes about where he'd been. He promised money from investments that never showed up in our accounts. I thought maybe I was imagining it. No, I said. You thought maybe I was right. And that was unbearable because if I was right, then you weren't the chosen one anymore. So, you ignored the truth. Tears spilled down Lily's cheeks. I wanted one thing, just one thing, where I finally had more than you. And if it meant pretending, if it meant looking away, I did. The confession hung in the air like smoke. No one reached to comfort her. No one spoke. Charles leaned back, his face pale, his authority drained. Margaret pressed her hands to her face, her shoulders shaking. The weight of my words, Lily's admission, the collapse of everything they had built on favoritism and illusion, it all pressed down on the room until even the walls seemed to groan with it. I stood tall in the center of it, no longer invisible, no longer silenced. I had laid bare the truth, and for once, there was no quick rebuttal, no dismissive laugh, no easy defense. The house was quiet except for Lily's sobs and the steady tick of the grandfather clock in the corner. For the first time in years, there was no argument left. No excuse to cling to, just silence, heavy, final. The last wall had fallen, and nothing stood between them and the truth anymore. The days after Lily's confession were strangely quiet. The house no longer hummed with denial, but with the hollow echo of people forced to sit with what they had ignored for too long. I thought perhaps that was the end of it. Evan had vanished. His pattern exposed, his grip broken. But predators rarely leave quietly. A week later, I received a letter, delivered by courier. Heavy cream paper, bold serif font, legal letterhead. It was addressed not to my family, but directly to me. The message was short, precise, and dripping with arrogance. Cease and desist. It accused me of defamation, libel, and intentional interference with contractual relations. It claimed I had fabricated identities to destroy Evan's reputation and demanded I retract my statements or face a lawsuit for damages exceeding $500,000. I read the letter once, then again, my pulse steady. I almost laughed. It was classic Evan. Twist the truth, weaponize intimidation, and count on people folding under pressure. But I was not one of his usual marks. I picked up the phone and dialed Vivian Scott, my mentor, the woman who had once guided me through my first corporate fraud investigation and who knew the law as well as she knew herself. Vivian answered on the second ring. He's back, isn't he? She asked without preamble. Yes, I said. And he wants to sue me. Vivian's voice was calm, steady as stone. Then we'll answer him with the truth he's so afraid of. That evening, we spread the evidence across Vivian's conference table. Not just the screenshots I had collected, but Karen's testimonies, the police reports from Colorado, the archived records of Evan's aliases, and bank statements that traced his disappearing acts from state to state. Vivian reviewed each document, annotating margins with legal codes and case precedents. This isn't defamation, she said firmly. This is exposure. What he doesn't realize is that by filing this threat, he's handed us an opening. I leaned forward. You mean federal? Vivian nodded. Interstate fraud, multiple victims, financial institutions involved. This isn't just civil anymore. It's criminal, and the feds don't like men who move stolen money across borders. Within a week, the tone shifted. Evan had intended to scare me into silence, but instead, he found himself facing inquiries. Letters went out to the women he had scammed before, requesting statements. The files Vivian assembled were forwarded to contacts in federal enforcement. The story was no longer about one family's heartbreak. It was about a pattern of theft stretching across 3 states and countless bank accounts. Evan tried to fight back, of course. He sent another letter full of legal jargon and bravado. He called Lily late at night, his voice dripping with false tenderness, insisting I was lying, that they were meant to be, that he could still fix everything. But Lily, broken from the wreckage of her own denial, hung up on him. The breaking point came 2 weeks later when federal agents visited the Walker home to ask questions. Word spread quickly through the neighborhood. Evan's charm had collapsed into a liability, his name now whispered with suspicion rather than awe. He didn't show up to file the lawsuit he had threatened. He didn't appear in court at all. By the time investigators traced the accounts linked to his aliases, Evan Cross, Edward Lawson, Ethan Lewis had already vanished again, fleeing ahead of the net closing in. But this time, it was different. He wasn't disappearing with their money. He was disappearing because he had no other choice. For once, he was the one running. I stood outside the courthouse steps with Vivian at my side, the spring air cool against my skin. I wasn't triumphant, not in the shallow sense. There was no joy in watching my sister's heartbreak or my parents' pride dissolve. But there was justice, real, tangible justice that went beyond family dynamics and personal grudges. Evan's game had been dragged into the light, and light had a way of burning through even the most carefully constructed illusions. Vivian placed a hand on my shoulder. "You did it," she said. I shook my head. We did it. All of us who refused to stay quiet. I thought of Karen, of the other women who had been too ashamed to speak, of Lily, who had ignored the truth until it crushed her, of myself, the invisible daughter who had finally forced everyone to see. Evan was gone. This time, not as the victor, but as a fugitive. And I knew deep down that was the true end of his story. The City Hall auditorium was filled with warm light and the hum of anticipation. I stood at the edge of the stage, a plaque heavy in my hands, my name etched in bold lettering, Community Leadership Award. The applause that washed over me felt different than any recognition I had ever received. It was not forced or obligatory. It was genuine, a chorus of people who saw me for who I was, not for the role I had been forced to play in my family's drama. I smiled as the cameras flashed, but more than that, I felt steady, grounded in the life I had built on my own terms. In my acceptance speech, I spoke not of betrayal or revenge, but of visibility. I told the crowd about the countless children who had grown up overlooked, their achievements muted by louder voices, their dreams dismissed as inconvenient. Worth, I said, does not come from those who fail to see us. It grows from within. But sometimes all it takes is one person to say, "I see you." And a life changes forever. The audience rose to their feet, the sound of their clapping echoing in my chest like a promise kept. That night, at a smaller gathering with colleagues and friends, I announced the launch of the Visibility Grant, a scholarship for academically gifted students whose accomplishments had gone unnoticed. It would pay for their tuition, housing, and books. It would ensure no one else had to build a secret life in the shadows just to survive. The words tasted right as I spoke them. Not just a plan, but a legacy. After the crowd thinned, Aunt Diane approached, her eyes shining with quiet pride. She waited until we were alone before speaking. "You know, Elena," she said softly, "you weren't as alone as you thought." I tilted my head, curious. Diane continued, "That first year at Columbia, the scholarship didn't cover everything. You must have wondered how you managed to scrape by. It was me. I sent the money. Anonymous. I wanted you to have a chance I never had." For a moment, I couldn't speak. My throat tightened. My vision blurred. Diane placed a hand over mine. "I couldn't watch you be buried the way I once was. I saw myself in you, and I wanted to give you the start I never got." I squeezed her aunt's hand, gratitude radiating from my chest. I thought of all the nights I had stayed up in my dorm room, calculating every dollar, believing I was utterly on my own. To know now that someone had quietly been in my corner, it changed the shape of my memories, softened the edges. "Thank you," I whispered, and Diane only smiled as if she had been waiting years to hear it. Later, back at my home office, I sat with my laptop open, drafting the first announcement for the scholarship fund. The glow of the screen lit my face as I worked, every keystroke a small act of defiance against the silence that had once smothered me. I paused when a new email notification appeared. The subject line read simply, "From Lily." My chest tightened as I clicked it open. The message was short. "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I know I can't undo what I did, but I wanted you to know I had a daughter. She's healthy. She's beautiful. And I thought maybe you'd want to meet your niece. Do you?" I leaned back, staring at the words. For years, my sister had been both rival and wound. Now, here was a bridge extended, fragile and trembling. I didn't know if I would cross it, but I knew the choice, at last, was mine. I rose and moved to the window. Outside, the city stretched in a sprawl of lights, vast and alive. My reflection looked back at me. Not the invisible daughter. Not the neglected child. But a woman who had reclaimed her own worth. The glass was cool against my fingertips as I whispered to myself, steady and certain I chose freedom. And I do not regret it. So that was Elena's story. The invisible daughter who was forced to her sister's wedding under threat, only to return stronger than ever, expose the fraud, and reclaim her worth. She walked away with the truth while her family was left to face the consequences of ignoring her all those years. Some might say she was too cold. Others might say she finally gave them exactly what they deserved. But in the end, Elena chose freedom, and she chose it on her own terms. Now, I want to hear from you. If you were in Elena's shoes, would you have done the same? Would you walk away and let them learn the hard way, or would you stay to repair what was broken? Thanks for watching. Take care. Good luck.